and I'm here to talk to you about how much I hate comments in code, and a couple other controversial opinions about writing code and being a developer. So to start, let's see who all, show of hands kind of, senior developers? Yeah. Junior developers? Cool. Mid-level developers? Yeah, those titles are crap. I hate them. I hate the title of junior and senior. I absolutely cannot stand someone who is just like, hey, I'm a senior developer and I'm better than you. That's not what I'm here for. Or people who are just like, oh, well, that guy's just a junior developer. They don't know anybody. They don't know anything. Like, they can't be trusted with the code base because they're junior. Right? That's not what we're here for. We're here to help each other out. We're here to teach people how to be developers. We're here to share knowledge and be adults. Right? Juniors and seniors, it sounds like high school all over again. Right? Like, I'm the seniors, I'm the ruler of the school. Right? The whole point of graduating high school was to not go back to high school. It was the worst. Also, thank you. Also, those cutesy titles that people have, like Code Poet and Code Ninja and Rockstar Developer, I don't understand those either. Are code poets actually poets? Do you write your code in iambic pentameter? Do code ninjas fight crime? Because that would be really cool if I had like a crime fighter on my team who could go like, beat up those people who are mean to me. Or Rockstar developers, are you actually in a rock band? Because if so, I know a guy who's a developer and is in a rock band. And I think he should be a Rockstar developer because he is actually a literal rock star. So instead of junior and senior and Code Poet and Code Ninja, I prefer things such as learning and knowledgeable developers. And I think they should also be specific to the subject matter. So I'm a learning JavaScript developer. You put JavaScript in front of me and I panic. I don't understand a language that has 3 different ways to define a method. I don't get it. It's so difficult for me to comprehend like what's happening. I'm a knowledgeable Java developer. I'm a knowledgeable Kotlin developer. I am a knowledgeable SQL person. I am a learning Docker developer or user. I understand like what Docker containers are and how they kind of like play in it, but like if you have me set up a Docker container, I struggle a lot and I need assistance from somebody who's way more knowledgeable than I am. The other thing about learning and knowledgeable developers is that learning developers have great ideas and you should listen to them. There have been a number of times where I've been working with somebody who's learning something, and they'll come up to me and they'll be like, hey, I think we should try it this way. And I'll be like, no, that wasn't my idea. I don't really want to do it that way. I want to try my idea. And then like an hour later, we go back to their idea and they were right. Yeah. So if you're sitting there and you're working with somebody who's learning something, let them try out whatever they're trying. If you don't believe what they're trying to do, time box it. And give them 20 minutes. Say, hey, in 20 minutes, we'll see where we're at, and if we're making progress, we'll keep going. If we're not making progress, we'll kind of reevaluate. We'll learn some lessons from what we just tried that didn't work, and then we'll try something new and something different. And we'll learn that, and the learning developers will learn by failure a lot more than they will learn by someone just going up to them and be like, your idea is crap and we shouldn't use it. Right? That's not, again, we're here to help each other out, not put each other down. And the other way to help learning developers really learn more is to make sure that they're always driving. So I am a huge proponent of pair programming. I use it a lot at my actual job, and I really love it. And it really helps me learn as a person, as a developer. And but there is like a catch to pair programming. And if you're the passive pair, and if you're just sitting there watching somebody code, you're not really gonna learn. You're just going to be bored, and you're going to sit there, and you're going to get distracted, and you're going to find something else to entertain yourself, but you're not going to be learning whatever it is that whoever's working with you is trying to teach you. Or maybe you're able to follow, maybe you are able to like be actively listening and be engaged, but they're going so fast that like you were 3 steps behind, still trying to figure out what they did 5 steps ago, and they're like all the way over here, and you're just like, what happens? That's not the best and easiest way to learn. So I think that learning developers should always be driving. And sometimes that means that it's going to be super, super slow progress. That's fine. Somebody's learning. Learning is more important than fast progress because the more the faster you can get somebody to learn, the faster they're going to be able to be an active member of your team, a very contributing member of the team, and the faster they're not going to need those training wheels. And I've told this to like a lot of other senior developers, like well-respected senior developers. And there was one guy I was talking to who rejected this idea because learning developers didn't know the keyboard shortcuts he knew. And I thought that was the most ridiculous thing anyone has ever told me in my entire life, because keyboard shortcuts, like, they're so easy to teach people, right? I struggled with keyboard shortcuts when I was a learning developer too, and I still struggle with them sometimes as well. And when I was paired with someone who knew them, every time I would try to do something without using the keyboard shortcuts, they would stop me and they would go, no, 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 Izzy, like keyboard shortcuts. And after like the 5th or 6th time, I finally like remembered these shortcuts and I knew them. But not letting somebody drive because they don't know keyboard shortcuts? Like, come on, buddy, what are you doing? All right, so learning developers are great, and they should always be driving. And we're going to talk about how comments are useless now. And we're going to do that using, we're going to take a time out before we get there, because I want people to learn, and I want people to learn by driving. And if I am up here driving, then no one's learning. So I do want to try to get a volunteer from the audience. I understand this is going to be might be a little bit more difficult at StirCheck. I have to stay in this box, so I will be like here and you will be there. You'll also be recorded and put on YouTube, so if nobody wants to do all of that, it's totally fine. So think about it while I explain to you what we're going to do for the rest of the presentation. So if I get out of here, I have a program that I wrote, a small little Java app. It's really tiny. It simulates a blackjack game. Can we all see that code okay? Cool. And it's just a text-based game, so if I run it and I tell it that 2 people are playing, I can hit or stand, and I'm just going to hit to try and force this game to end. And once somebody busts, it'll tell me who has won. Pretty simple. If anyone's not familiar with Java, these 2 slashes refer to a comment. This is how you define a variable. You give it a type and then a name. And this is how you define a method. You give it public or private or protected or whatever. And then a type and then a name. Pretty simple. And we're going to go through different types of comments that there are in code. And we're going to go through how to remove them. So does anybody want to be my volunteer? Yeah, come on up. That's fine. That's what I'm here for.
I'm a C# developer.
Cool. What's your name?
Steve.
This is Steve. Everybody give Steve a big round of applause. Yeah, Steve. All right. So it's a Mac, too, so also.
Oh,
no?
I'm way out of my element.
You're going to be fine.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so the main thing that I'll have to do with Mac is go back and forth between the presentation and the code base. Okay. So presentation, code base, 3-finger swipe back and forth. Right. You can also command tab if you're familiar with that. Okay. If you like that one better. All right. Okay, so we're going to go back to talking about how useless comments are. Because I don't know about you all, but I really hate comments. I hate comments so much that I wrote a whole speech about it. All right, so if you want to get me to the next slide in the deck, just hit the down arrow. Yep, so first thing we're going to talk about are to-do comments. To-do comments are one of my least favorite types of comments because no one's going to really do work in a to-do comment, and especially like a corporate kind of basis. So if we go back to the code, other way, there you go. And if you hit Command and 6, keyboard shortcut, and this is showing us all the to-do comments we have in this code. These to-do comments are for adding UI elements to make gameplay prettier. That's a really big to-do comment. Can you do that in like 10 minutes? Doubtful. Me neither. I'm not really a front-end developer. I can't really do that. So instead of you leaving these comments in, we're gonna. I know I'm out of frame right now, but whatever. I forgot to pull these things out of my bag. I need my pen. Okay. we're going to write some tickets. And I have a Trello board for when I have internet and give this talk, but I don't have internet in a movie theater, so we're going to write some tickets on a nice big old-fashioned sticky note. So the point of having tickets instead of these to-do comments is we can flesh out what we're trying to do a lot more in depth. And when we go back to them, we'll actually remember what we're trying to do. And we'll actually be able to put them in our backlog and figure out, prioritize, and actually have these action items in a place where someone is going to work on it. So we've got a couple, oops. I'm really great at things right now. It's cool. So yeah, we need to have a UI element to make the gameplay prettier to figure out how many people are playing. So how many people are playing UI? It's cool. I should have written these beforehand. It's fine. And that's going to go on our board. So that's that comment done. So if you click on that comment, just the line that it's on. No, just the line. Yeah, you're cool. And then Command Y. We're using IntelliJ's Community Edition. It is a free IDE. IDEs have a lot of really nice built-in ways to refactor code or just yank out lines like that. So it's pretty cool. So let's double-click on this, that comment, and it'll get us to where it's at. So we need to make a UI element to display the winning game. So UI element winning. I can spell winning game. Totally matters that I can spell because you can all read my tiny handwriting on my tiny Post-its. And yeah, you can go ahead and delete that one. Same thing. Cool. And now let's find the last comment and see what else we're doing. So these are turn actions. So UI for turn actions. All right. So now, next time I see my Scrum Master, I'm going to give them these stickies for these tickets, and they're going to write them all up, and someone will actually be able to work on them later. And we'll have things like mock-ups and design and requirements, and we'll actually be able to work on these instead of these to-do comments. I worked with a developer once who put to-do comments into our code, and we argued back and forth about them for, no joke, 2 months before I finally convinced him that these should be tickets instead of to-do comments. So we went through the code, kind of similar to what we did here, and found all the to-do comments that he wrote, and asked him what they were actually about so he could write tickets, and he couldn't remember what they were about. So by having these tickets here, with our requirements and our nice little backlog, refinement, and priorities, someone's actually going to work on these, and when we get to them, we're going to remember what they are. So to-do comments, we know why we don't use them, right? Right. Cool. All right, let's go back to the presentation and see what else we're going to talk about. Other way. I got married. That was my wedding photo. Cool. Dead code. Dead code as comments is so useless, right? This is what source control is for, people, right? If I can remove some dead code, then I can figure, if I really needed that back, I can go back into the history and find it. If I have it and it was dead for a reason. You're probably not going to need it anymore. You're probably going to find a better way to do it, or your requirements are going to change, or you're just not even going to need it at all. So let's go back to the project. Other way. There you go. You'll find. And we used to go to the blackjack.java class. That one. Ugh, I can talk. All right. And if you scroll up, you can see we've got all of this dead code here. This is all just comments. Comments, comments, comments. And it fills up more than a screen. So you can minimize that too, just to give you a little bit more. And still, it's filling up more than a screen. All right. So IntelliJ has a couple pretty cool little handy tricks that connect to GitLab. So if you hover the mouse over the numbers, and right-click, which on my machine is a 2-finger click, and you hit the annotate button, we can see the commit messages for all of these lines and why we did them. So if we hover over this guy where the code's commented, so we can see what we did. So I was refactoring some stuff, and I commented out all of these codes. And if you double-click on that guy, I think. The Blackjack. Yeah. We can see what I did and all the changes I made. And one of the changes I made was commenting out all this code. So why did I do that? I don't know. let's look at the next file. So hit that arrow button. Oh, it looks like I moved that all into its own class and made it its own method. So if this code exists somewhere else in my code base, do I really need it in that first class? I'm going to go with no on that one. So if you hit the little red circle, and then we're going to yank out, you can close that, and you're going to yank out all of these commented lines. So you can highlight a bunch of them. Yeah. You're fine. Just hit Command-Y on that highlight. And you can just do this, keep doing that until they're all gone. Boom, boom. Almost there, almost there. And there's 2 more. And let's get rid of some of that white space, too, because I don't really like a lot of white space. But that's not, it's not what we're here for. We're here about comments, not about white space. All right, so now we got rid of all of that dead code. We can see our whole class on one screen, and we actually know what's happening. If we really needed that code back, what we can do is you can right-click just anywhere in this file, and we can go to our local history and show history. And this is IntelliJ's cool little thing where it tells me moments ago I got rid of all of this code. When I check this in, like this kind of change will also go to GitLab, or GitHub is what we're using, and you'll be able to see it there in the Git history. But we haven't checked it in yet, so it's just in our local history. So you can close out of that one. And our code looks so much nicer and cleaner. And that's why we don't put dead code in comments. All right, so let's go back to the presentation, figure out what else we're going to talk about. Other way. Oh. It's fine. It's cool. I should have put presentation and yeah. This is my bad for not helping you out. So bug fixes. So this one's kind of strange for me to talk about. I've never really seen this before. I just found out that this existed when I was in a conference in Denver, and apparently this is a thing that they do out there. It's very strange. So if we go back to the code, there we go, yeah. So we can see here on line 15, I have a comment in there with a bug number, bug 001. Okay, cool. What does that mean? I don't know. Apparently, according to the people that I talked to out in Denver, this bug 001 comment means that there was a bug in this code at some point, and by having someone leave that comment there, these people were able to figure out that they needed to be careful with the following lines of code. So I don't really buy into that because, if I should always be careful with the lines of code that I'm writing. Also, if I'm fixing a bug, I should have a unit test about that bug to make sure that I never do that again. Unit tests are a fantastic piece of documentation that are very, very underutilized as documentation. When I get new projects and get into a new code base, the first thing I do to understand that code base is look at the unit tests and read through them and figure out what the code is actually supposed to be doing. And then I go look at the code and figure out how it does what it does. Anytime you fix a bug, you should add a unit test. End of story. That's your documentation. That's how you let people know that there was a bug. If that's not good enough, we still have these comments. So if you click on that line there. 17? Yeah, 17, 16, 15, any of them. Okay. Yeah, so we can see here's a commit message that has my ticket number in it saying that I fixed this bug. And what I was doing was limiting the number of players in a testable manner, because I did this originally and it wasn't testable, and then I realized I was telling you to write tests for bugs and didn't have them, so good job me. Cool. And we can open game test, and we can see what our tests were and what we were actually doing. So what the bug was I didn't have a limit on the number of players, and you could try to play a game of blackjack with 42 players when there's only 52 cards in a deck, and yeah, that didn't work out so well. So I decided I just chose an arbitrary number of 7, and that's the most amount of players that we can play in this game. Cool. And I've got tests surrounding how that actually works. If we have 0 players, we need players to play the game. If we have more than 7 players, we don't have enough cards to play the game. And if we have less than 7 players, it should actually read between 1 and 7, but whatever, it's fine. You can see how we'll actually be able to play the game. Cool, so close that, yeah. And you can close that one too. I don't really care about it anymore. And so let's get rid of that stupid comment because it really doesn't mean anything. Cool. And we got it. Awesome. Yay, team. All right. So bug fix comments. Does anybody actually use those in here? No? OK, cool. So glad we're all on the same page of those comments are super, super useless. Same page? It's fun. All right, let's go back to the presentation. Other way. It's cool. It's cool. It's cool. It's cool. All right, and business logic. So this is probably the type of comment that most of you are the most familiar with, business logic. A lot of people use comments to explain why they're doing something. I don't really think you need to do that. I think that there are so many other ways to actually explain why you're doing something. And the first thing that you can do is you can rename your variables and figure out why they are. So back to the code. Yeah, we did that one. And we want to open card.java. So that model there, yep. All right. So I have a lot of comments here explaining. I'm just going to scroll up just a little bit. Oops. Nope. No, I'm not. There we go. So I have a lot of comments here explaining what these variables are actually supposed to be for starting with this constructor on line 12. And I have two variables, x and y, and it's the suit and the face value of the card. Cool. You know, not that big of a deal from this screen. Like this whole method fits on one line. You can pretty easily tell what x and y are supposed to be from like the next two lines, and it's not that big of a deal, except when you go try to use this. So if we open game.java, you're doing a great job, Steve.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I want to go to line 43. Other way. And keep going. Yeah, there we are. And just hit your cursor in there.
Lost track of it.
Yeah, I lose track of it all the time, too. Yeah. And hit Command P. So Command P is a keyboard shortcut in IntelliJ. When you're writing a method, it will tell you the parameters that are supposed to be in that method. And if we look here, we can see our parameters are x and y. That doesn't mean anything to me. Do you know what x and y are?
2 letters.
Yep. See? They're yeah, maybe these are plane coordinates, and our cards are like on a plane. Like you can't really figure out very easily what x and y are. So if we go back to card, we can fix this pretty easily by just renaming those variables. So if you hit your cursor near the x, like next to the x, and if you hit, this is going to be a little bit finger tricky.
Okay.
You want to do Command, and then the Fn key,
Okay.
and then you want to hit F6. I think it's F6. Is it F6 or F7, Navin? F6? Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. This is not what I was expecting. I think if we, yeah. So now we can go in here and we can easily rename this variable. So y is the face value of the card, so face value camel case, please. Thank you. And x is the suit. And refactor. It finds every instance that we had of those variables, and it automatically finds them for us. Doing a simple refactoring like this is so much easier and cleaner and faster than going to try to find everywhere we had those variables used. It is that the rename variable keyboard shortcut and feature of IntelliJ is my most used feature of IntelliJ. It's so handy and saves me so much time and prevents so many typos. It's fantastic. All right, so these comments from lines 11 through 8, it's basically saying that suit is suit and face value is face value. I don't think we necessarily need those, so let's get rid of them. My one caveat to my whole speech is these Javadoc style comments, I'm okay with them if you're doing an open source project or like something that's widely used across many teams in your company. They're nice as documentation to let people know what your method is doing if you write your comment correctly. The comments that we have in here are kind of just telling you what parameters are and not really telling you anything about what the method does. It's kind of a little useless. So we could go through and like rename every single variable in this file, but I feel like we're all on the same page here. And in the interest of time, I'm going to move on. But in theory, like we would go through and rename all of these values. All right. So let's go back to the yep. Yay, we did it right. Yay! All right. So the other thing that we use business logic for is when we have large chunks of code and we're trying to tell people what we're actually doing in these large chunks of code. Instead of having comments there, the better thing to do is to extract your code out into well-named methods. So back, there we go. And we're going to go to the Blackjack class, the game class. Yeah, there we are, cool. And we're gonna, we have this method here. We can't even see the method header. We can't see the bottom of the method. We've got a lot of comments telling us what we're doing. This is not a good method. Oh God. I had the heebie-jeebies when I was writing this method. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna get rid of all these comments by extracting this code out into some well-named methods. So if you scroll up a little bit so we can see the top of this. Yeah, there we go, cool. So what we wanna do is we're gonna take everything from line 31 all the way down to line 47. I really need to get a mouse or something so people can stop using my trackpad. It's fine. Yeah. Okay. And in the highlighted area, right-click and extract. Where is it? Refactor. Thank you. And extract. So there are keyboard shortcuts for this. I always forget what they are to the beginning, and I'm also pulling this up so you can see all of the different types of refactoring and extracting that you can actually do with IntelliJ. There's a lot of different things that you can do, and it's really handy to just come in here and use all of these tools so that you don't actually have to cut and paste code everywhere. So we're going to extract this into a method. Yep, and this method is going to be setUpDeck. Yep, and hit refactor. Cool. So now we have a deck, and we're just setting it up. Great, awesome, cool. Yay, team. All right. So, and if you command-click on that method that we just created, there, is it over there? Cool. Right? So there's the whole method we just created. So we're setting up the deck. Figuring out how to set up a deck is something that I think most of us understand, what a deck of playing cards kind of looks like. So we can get rid of these comments where we're talking about creating the playing deck, and there can only be 4 suits. We all know there's 4 suits. We can figure out that these are the card values. We can figure out that we're putting them all together, and then we're shuffling them. And there are people out there who are like, oh, Izzy, you should really make that shuffle its own method. But guys, it's 2 lines. We can deal with this for now. So let's scroll back up. And we still can't really fit this whole method on 1 line. But it's starting to get a little bit easier to read, a little bit nicer. So let's keep going. So from line 32 all the way down to line 40, we're going to do the same thing. Yep, and I think it's Command M, maybe? Command Option M, thank you. Yep, there we go, same thing. We're going to get hands, or set up hands, or what do you think we should call this? Do you have any ideas? We're setting up the hands. I don't know what it does. Oh, cool. So what we're doing is we're setting up the hands for all the players who are playing the games. So deal hands. Let's do that one.
Keep it in business.
Yeah, cool. All right, so now we take our deck and we're dealing some hands and we're getting a list of hands back. So we can command click on that, on their new method, and we see where it gets auto-generated down at the bottom of our file. We know we're dealing our hands, so we don't need another comment telling us that we're dealing the hands because we know that's what we're doing because that's what this method is called. Cool. All right, and we'll scroll back up. And we're getting close, right? We can see kind of what we're doing. We're setting up the deck, we're dealing the hands, and there's still a lot in this method, and we can't fit it on 1 screen and still. So let's keep going. So from this variable, this line 34, all the way down to line 59. Nope.
You're gonna like that? All right.
Cool. It's cool.
Yeah, 59.
59.
Yeah.
You're doing great. You're doing great. It's fine.
Oh,
okay. Command Z. Undo. Yeah.
All right. There we go.
There you go. Cool. And then Command Option M again. Yep. And this one we're gonna have. So what we're doing is we are taking turns. So taking turns. And yep, there we go. We've got our deck that we're passing in, it's called deck. We've got our hands that we're passing in, they're called hands. Or passing in a scanner because I set up this file terribly and I should have put the scanner down by the other variable, but it's fine for now, we'll deal with it. So refactor. All right. So this is pretty cool. This looks really nice. We've got, we're setting up the deck. We're dealing our hands. We're taking turns. We don't really need to know that we're playing the game until somebody's bust. That's kind of like taking turns. Yep. Cool. And we've got this one other thing. So let's really, really finish this method and really do the nice little abstraction and take everything out of this method, so all it does is just call other methods. It's pretty cool. So we're going to take the line 34 all the way down to line 43. Command Option M. And we're going to output winner. Something with winner. Yeah. And refactor. Cool. This method was so long when we started, and we needed so many comments to keep track of what we were doing and what all was going on. And now we've got, like 5 lines of code telling us what we're doing, and they're so nice and succinct and easy to read. We're setting up the deck, we're dealing the hands, we're taking our turns, and we're outputting the winner. So much nicer. Do you think this looks nicer?
It's a lot easier to put.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to figure out what's happening. It's a lot easier to deal with internally. And we now have these things that are nice, succinct little pieces of code that we can then go and test. Testing is so huge. So all of those comments that we had, those are all unit tests that we can write for this class. Cool. So let's go back to the presentation and figure out what I'm going to talk about next, because I don't remember either. All right. Unit test is documentation. We've talked about that one a lot, so cool. We can go to the next slide. Code coverage is the worst metric ever. I will fight you on this. So code coverage, for those of you who don't know, for your unit tests, code coverage is a metric that goes through all of your unit tests, and it figures out which lines of code you're actually touching with your unit tests, and it'll give you a percentage based off of how much code you have tested. Yeah, it's 100%, it's so easy to fake. Instead of caring about code coverage, what we actually need to care about is what our unit tests are actually testing, and if they're a valid test that can actually, test what we're trying to get at. So let's go back to our code. And I think we want to use hand test. I think that's the one we want. Yep. OK. So I've got a couple unit tests in here that are taking care of how ACEs actually work. These are actually pretty nice, valid unit tests. They go through what actually is happening, and you can see I have some nice assertions that figure out, take the hands and get the score of the hands. Cool. Actually useful. And then we see this unit test at the bottom, and the line I've got on line 64, where I'm asserting that true is true. Cool. If I look at the title of this unit test, I think it should be a great unit test, calculating the correct point value of a hand. Awesome, that's a great unit test to have. And all I'm doing is asserting that true is true. So scroll up to the top of the file. And you see the little green circle thingy there? Hit that, and then run with coverage. So this is going to give us the output of my code coverage. And I'm just going to, quickly. No, I'm not. Not quickly. Expand that out so we can see what kind of code coverage I've got in this class. So I have 100% code coverage for my hand class. Yay! I did that by asserting that true is true. Boo! For my card class, which I don't even have a test file for, I've got 66% of my methods and 76% of my lines covered. That's awesome. 76 is my favorite number. Yeah, I'm not actually testing that class. I just call a couple methods in it, and that's kind of all I'm doing there. So I have 0% code coverage for a card class. Hand, maybe if I didn't have the assertion of trues, then maybe we would get somewhere. I'm just going to close this one. And there's also a couple, things that I do in this class where I set the player ID and then never even attempt to try to test it. I just called that method in this test class to get me 100% code coverage. The only reason I called it there. Code coverage is terrible, and it can 100% be fake. And people come up to me later, and they're usually just well, I agree with you, but your code coverage thing, it can totally be useful. Like, making sure you don't go below a certain percentile of your testing, or if you if you need to know point where you actually need tests. That's where code coverage really comes into play. But I don't really care about the percentage number. Okay, yeah, cool, but right, like I've got this code coverage for this card class, and I'm not actually testing anything in it. So this is telling me that I don't need to do much there, but I really need to do everything there because I'm not actually testing it. Right? Not cool. Code coverage is terrible. If you use it, you should feel bad. Let's go back to my slides. And let's go see what our next one is. All right, devs can and should test their own work. More than just writing unit tests. Spin up your own code and try to run it. I was working with somebody once who's probably in this room, I think, maybe. Sorry, calling you out. Nobody knows who you are. Who wrote a story and wrote his unit test and ran his unit test, and they were great. And then somebody tried to spin up the branch and test the ticket, and we couldn't even hit the page he was trying to work on. Yeah, if he'd just taken 4 seconds to try to spin up the project locally and try to hit the page he was working on, that would have saved us a lot of effort. I think that ticket ended up having something no joke, a dozen bugs. Because this developer didn't even try to spin it up. He just relied on his unit tests. So we need to test our shit. Oops, sorry. We need to test our stuff. Let's go back to we're not going to run these tests because they're not super useful. Our game tests are actually kind of useful, so let's go to that class, and let's just run the tests. We don't need to run them with coverage because coverage is pretty terrible. Cool. And we do actually, I take that back. We did actually have a couple, valid tests in the hand class, so let's go back and run that one because we were keeping track of our aces. Right, and scroll all the way up to the top. There you go, and hit that one again. Although we did just do that when we were running the coverage, so we really didn't need to do that. It's fine. All right, and let's get this to play. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the touchpad of my thing real quick. And so we're going to hit the run blackjack, go down a couple, and hit enter. And it should run. Oh, no, we have to hit the run button on the touchpad instead of just hitting enter. So do you want to tell it that 2 people are playing? Oop, that's fine. 2 people are playing, cool. And let's just hit on that hand. Yep. And let's hit on this hand again. Oh, and we're both still, nobody's busted, so let's keep hitting, hit. And hit again. Cool, so we finally got player 1 to bust and player 0 won. So it seems like we're all functional and all good. So awesome. Let's give a big hand to Steve, our plucky volunteer. Steve, you can go sit down. Thank you so much for coming up and being out here with me. It's more fun up here when you have a friend. It's fine. I like making friends, guys. Just come be my friend later. And so that's it. Yeah, cool. How do I do work? Those are all of my controversial opinions that I have for you all today. I understand that what I told you, a lot of the things you may or may not agree with. It's fine if you disagree with me. I don't really know most of you, so I don't really care. Every time I've given this speech, somebody's come up to me afterwards. It's always a guy. And they come up to me and they go, I agree with you, but. Okay, first of all, if you agree with me, but, you actually disagree with me. It's fine. I'm a big girl. You can come up to me like, hey, I didn't agree with this one point that you had. It's totally cool. We'll still be friends. I won't take it personally. And when they talk to me about why they had a comment in code and why they think their comment is valid in their code, my answer to them is usually unit test. Use unit tests as documentation. Actually understand how to utilize them as documentation. And then they keep coming back to me like, no, blah, 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 blah. And I keep kind of going, unit tests, guys, unit tests. And we kind of go around in circles until I get tired of the conversation and I let them believe that, they've changed my mind. No one has ever actually changed my mind. Still giving this speech. Hopefully, this speech kind of helps you go and give you a couple different context points and a little bit of ways to like mentally reframe what you're doing. Hopefully it makes you be just a little bit more careful about when you're putting comments in code and how you're using stuff and how you're utilizing your unit test and your code coverage and things along those lines. But my hands aren't in your code base. My hands are the only hands in my code base. I work for Kroger Technology. We're hiring. My manager is somewhere around here if you would like a job. I could use friends. I'm the only person working on my project, so if you want to write an API, it's fun. Yeah, but thank you all for taking the time to listen to me today, and hopefully you learned something, or at least had a good laugh.